Hi everybody, it's Mr. Gray here. Thank you again for another great week. I hope everybody had a really nice spring break to spend time with family or travel or whatever you had to do. I had a really great time getting rested and recharged for the end of our school year, which is gonna go really fast. We only have 7 weeks of school left starting next week, and so things are just going to move really quickly, but we're still going to have a lot of fun and do a lot of really good work in our class at the end of this year. I want to get right to you some announcements. The first one is that on Friday, the 14th, the kids started their All Apis project. And so they can tell you about that when they come home on Friday, but that is going to run every week through almost the end of the year. So a 4th grader, a 5th grader, and a 6th grader will be in a group, and they'll be working on a specific project related to our school. So they'll be able to tell me more about that, but I wanted to give you a heads up that on Tuesday, May 23rd, we're going to have a convention for the All Apis project. So the kids are going to have a place to kind of present their work and possibly like receive some awards or some feedback, but their parents will be invited to that too. So it's a little bit of an end of the year celebration, but also it's specifically for the Apis families to come together. So that is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, May 23rd, and it will be at the very end of the school day. So from 1:44 or like about 1:45 to 2:45 p.m. In the school MPR. You'll be able to come and see all the work that the kids have done, and there might be some other things happening at that time. So I'll give you more information about that later, but I hope you can kind of mark that as something you might want to come to at the end of the year. For a reader's workshop next week, we're going to finish our When You Trap a Tiger project. The kids read the book When You Trap a Tiger this week, and it's really just an introduction to fantasy novels because we're going to start a fantasy unit next week in school. So we chose When You Trap a Tiger because it has really great elements of fantasy, and it just kind of gets our brains ready for really studying fantasy a little more in depth. So next week we're going to finish up When You Trap a Tiger. The kids are going to finish. They're working on a theme park related to the novel, so you can imagine they've been keeping track of things like characters, the setting, connections to other books, and the theme, and they're going to incorporate those things into a theme park based on When You Trap a Tiger. So you can think about like the Wizarding World for Harry Potter, for instance, is obviously related to Harry Potter, so they're making a sketch, a poster of a theme park related to When You Trap a Tiger. So they'll finish that. Next week, we'll actually start the fantasy unit, and we'll start by getting just oriented to fantasy books. The kids will go book shopping in our library and kind of make a plan for what books they want to read. They'll start to learn alongside the character, learning like what is happening in this world, like what is the problem that I'm having, and then they're going to actually keep track of problems. That will help us get started in our last big unit of the year, fantasy books. In Writer's Workshop, the kids are going to reflect the work we're doing in reading. They're going to actually write a fantasy story. Now, this is going to be creative writing, but it's going to be really structured because it is hard for kids this age to kind of write a whole book. So you can imagine they're going to write a whole story broken up into sections, but it's going to be like shorter than a book, but hopefully encompass all the most important features of a fantasy novel. So we're going to get started next week. Again, kind of getting oriented to different kinds of fantasy stories. The big distinction that we're going to make in writing is that sometimes fantasy stories have like magic in the way of like dragons, or it's kind of set sometimes in like a medieval setting. That's like one type of fantasy, but we're going to go to the type of fantasy where there's often a protagonist who's a kid about the age of the 5th graders, and they have some difficulty, a hardship in their life, and there's going to be some incident that opens up a new world to them, and that's going to be how they grow and how they maybe become a hero in their fantasy novel. So it's going to kind of take elements of their own life and put it into a fantasy world. That's really how we're going to structure this fantasy story that the kids are writing. So we're going to start that process next week. We're going to figure out who the character is, who the main protagonist is in the story. We're going to figure out what kind of person they are. We're going to write a couple of chapters or a couple of sections of the story, and that'll get us going for fantasy writing. In math, where our last biggest unit is on decimals. We'll have one more small one in a few weeks, but next week we're going to look at decimals and how they exist on a number line, and making some number lines for that. And then we're really going to focus on kind of making number lines in that part. It's going to be really a review, I think, of decimals on the number line, but we're talking about making number lines as you get into 6th grade. There are several different new concepts that will focus on a number line, so having that good solid foundation of how to make them is going to be really helpful. We'll review what we've done with addition and subtraction of decimals. We'll take a quiz on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, the kids have their end of year math assessment. The scores don't go anywhere. This is purely like the district looks at all the scores. So all the fifth graders in the district take this math assessment at some point in the next couple weeks. So we're going to take it on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we're going to move into dividing decimals. And that'll be our focus for about a week and a half for math. In social studies, our next unit we're working on is going to be the important battles of the Revolutionary War. So we're going to quickly go through some of the most important battles and the impact on the war. The kids are going to do a project where they're keeping track of the battles on a map and kind of putting some information about it. Also, in a few weeks, the kids are going to take their capitals test. And so while we're looking at the battles of the Revolution, they will also be spending time getting to know the capitals a little better. And we'll continue our read aloud for probably a few more weeks, which is the Young Readers edition of The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. In science, the kids are going to start their last big module or unit of the year called Galactic Guidebook. They kind of will review their previous knowledge of the solar system and then kind of look at patterns in the solar system and then patterns in our own life and how they match up. And of course, they'll see Mr. Marco for Science Lab. No vocabulary this week. The very last announcement is just to give you a heads up that state testing is coming. It's a few weeks away. I'll keep you in the loop for that situation, but that'll be several days where the kids are taking tests about math and English for reading and writing. Those tests are put together. So there'll be 2 days where we're taking math tests, 2 days where we're taking English tests, English language arts, and then there'll be another one that's specific to fifth grade, which is a science test. So not all the grades do it, but fifth grade does. And again, I'll give you a little heads up on that, and I'll talk about kind of what might be helpful that week for students. And clearly our academics will take a little bit of a backseat because it's just a lot of testing in a short amount of time, but that will be coming up as well. So thank you again. Hope everybody had a really nice week back, and we're going to just focus on making the best possible last few weeks of fifth grade. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.